Ethan, stay back! Ethan!
These are the most horrifying moments captured by police body cameras. These police officers had to face dangerous situations and were forced to open fire. However, controversy arose as some believe the officers' use of force in these cases was not entirely justified. At 10:17 in the morning on September 16, 2024, the Fairfax County Police Department received a report requesting a welfare check on a woman who was said to be in a distressed state. The officer dispatched to the scene was Peter Louu, a 14-year veteran who quickly arrived at the reported apartment and knocked on the door. Sydney Wilson, 33, wearing a bathrobe, opened the door and said hello twice before abruptly slamming it shut without answering any of the officer's questions. Bodycam footage shows the officer continuing to knock multiple times and repeatedly asking Wilson to open the door. After nearly 3 minutes of attempts to persuade her, the woman suddenly reappeared, smiling and calmly asking, "How are you?" She then immediately swung a kitchen knife and attacked the officer's face. The woman was seen chasing the officer with a sharp knife while he tried to retreat down the hallway. The officer repeatedly ordered Wilson to step back, but she only hesitated for a few seconds when she saw the officer raise his gun before charging straight at him like a wild animal. Moments later, the knife-wielding woman launched multiple attacks on the officer's face, forcing him to fire his weapon. The attacker was shot 3 times before collapsing to the ground. The footage shows blood dripping from the officer's head onto his hands and the floor as he radioed for medical assistance. Despite being injured, the officer rushed to the woman who had just attacked him and asked if she was okay. The woman's groans after being shot left a haunting impression on viewers. The officer, his face covered in blood, sat beside the woman and waited for backup to arrive. When additional officers arrived, they attempted to revive Wilson but were unsuccessful. Other life-saving measures were taken, but the victim succumbed to her severe injuries at the scene. Fairfax County Police later released the footage, stating that the officer did everything possible to de-escalate the situation but was trapped in the hallway, leaving him with no choice but to fire his weapon. Police confirmed that Wilson was pronounced dead after being transported to a nearby hospital, while the officer was also taken to the hospital for treatment of his injuries, which were fortunately not life-threatening. Many online viewers, after watching the bodycam footage, remarked that it was horrifying, like a scene straight out of Resident Evil, where a man desperately fires multiple shots at a monster as it keeps charging at him. In an incident from October 2020, a completely naked man, in a highly agitated state, smashed a glass window and ran out of his home. He screamed that he would kill the officer while charging toward him, his body covered in blood, a scene straight out of a horror movie. And now, here's the full sequence of events captured by the police bodycam. On the morning of October 19th, Ethan Freeman, 37, was found sprawled in the lobby of a local school, repeatedly complaining of chest pain and demanding that the police call an ambulance immediately. Officer Matthew Yao of the Thornton Police Department arrived at the scene to assess the situation. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Ethan was escorted onto the ambulance to be taken to the hospital. However, his sudden actions afterward left the officers bewildered. The man suddenly bolted, despite Officer Yao's efforts to chase after him and order him to stop. Later that afternoon, a neighbor living in the same apartment complex as Ethan called 911 after hearing strange noises coming from his unit. Officer Yao responded to the call and arrived alone outside Ethan's apartment. Yao discovered the man inside his home, naked, covered in blood, and visibly agitated. Ethan told the officer that he wanted to die, that he was bleeding, and demanded that the officer call an ambulance immediately. Ethan Freeman shouted profanities, hurled insults, and repeatedly threatened to kill Yao, who remained calm as he had earlier in the day. Yao attempted to de-escalate the situation, telling him, "I want to help you." However, Ethan Freeman continued his death threats, escalating the confrontation. Bodycam footage shows that Ethan never stopped making threats or showed any signs of complying with Officer Yao's repeated commands. Ultimately, he jumped out of a window and charged at Yao, resembling a crazed monster. The officer faced Ethan, who was naked, covered in blood, and out of control, while holding a broken piece of furniture. The officer ordered him to step back 5 times before firing his weapon. Ethan Freeman was shot dead at the scene. An autopsy later confirmed that Ethan Freeman died from 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. According to his family and landlord, Ethan had a history of mental illness, frequently exhibited erratic behavior, and caused disturbances. In the days leading up to the incident, he had been sleep-deprived that he told paramedics he had used methamphetamine, but the autopsy only detected traces of multiple illicit substances in his system. During a press conference investigating the incident, officials presented bodycam footage from Officer Louu. The footage showed 3 separate interactions between the officer and Ethan Freeman that day, including the fatal confrontation at his apartment. The tension in the room was palpable, as people watched Ethan suddenly rush out from behind his home after repeatedly threatening the officer's life. A tragic situation. It's hard to imagine how officers handle these encounters daily. Clearly, Ethan Freeman's mental health played a significant role in this incident. Officer Louu told investigators that he feared Ethan would injure him or try to grab his gun. He believed he didn't have enough time to use less lethal methods like a taser or pepper spray. Officials stated that the bodycam footage was crucial to the case, as it allowed them to verify the officer's account against what was actually recorded. Investigators later concluded that the officer had no time to put away his firearm and switch to non-lethal defense. They affirmed that Officer Louu had only seconds to react and act lawfully. The case of the unarmed man being fatally shot by police in New Hampshire was ultimately ruled justified. Deputy Attorney General Jane Young announced that no criminal charges would be filed. Sunday, May 7, 2023, in Charleston County, Deputy Sheriff Evan Cubbage and his colleague pulled over a vehicle at around 3:45 in the afternoon on Savannah Highway near Ravenel. After a brief and friendly conversation with the 2 individuals in the car, Cubbage called for backup. As the second officer approached the vehicle, the man inside suddenly opened fire. The shooter was later identified as 28-year-old James Rakeem Pierce. He was shot and pronounced dead at the scene. The female driver was unharmed in the shootout. She was arrested shortly after for further investigation. The shooter struck Deputy Sheriff Evan Cubbage 3 times. He was immediately taken to the hospital for treatment. Fortunately, despite the severity of his injuries, they were not life-threatening, and he was discharged that same evening. This traffic stop highlights the dangers our officers face every day. Sheriff Kristen Graziano said to the press regarding the incident, "They put themselves in harm's way. That we are very fortunate that both officers survived this incident." The sheriff's office stated that both officers involved in the shooting were placed on administrative leave with pay, as per protocol. New York police shot a woman after she smiled and pulled a knife to attack them. Intense footage of the shooting incident occurred on April 29, 2022, while police were responding to a domestic dispute involving 34-year-old Jamie Faith. At the time of the shooting, Faith was living with her partner and their 3 young sons in Hyde Park, a town nearly 2 hours from Manhattan. In a 911 call, Faith reported that her boyfriend had been violent toward her and their children. When officers arrived, 2 of them escorted Faith's boyfriend outside. The man told police that the couple had been going through a very difficult 2 months. Meanwhile, another officer remained inside the house to reassure Jamie Faith. The video shows an officer leading Faith from the bedroom into the living room when she suddenly pulled a knife from her pants. The officers immediately tackled the woman to the ground, attempting to wrestle the weapon from her hand, but Faith fiercely resisted. One of the officers repeatedly shouted, "Knife! Knife!" and radioed 911. "Send another unit. We have our guns drawn on the suspect." The woman faced at least 3 armed officers. One officer used a taser to subdue her, but Faith remained standing and continued advancing toward them, ignoring commands to drop the knife and get on the ground. At that moment, officers fired a total of 4 shots at Jamie Faith, causing her to collapse. That a man's anguished scream could be heard as the shooting occurred. The entire confrontation lasted less than 20 seconds, from the moment Faith drew the knife to the police response. Jamie Faith was pronounced dead at the scene. On July 29, 2024, at about 3:20 in the morning, officers from the West Los Angeles Division responded to a radio call regarding a burglary suspect in the 2600 block of South Helm Avenue. Upon arrival, officers were informed that the suspect, Lavelle Adama, had smashed an elderly woman's window and broken into her home. Shortly after, he set fire to the woman's house and attempted to break into another man's residence. Los Angeles Fire Department personnel arrived at the scene and spotted Adama inside the house. Officers attempted to subdue Adama, but he suddenly grabbed a knife and charged at them. One officer fired 2 rubber bullets at him to surrender, but he remained barricaded inside with the weapon. The Metropolitan Division SWAT team was then deployed and quickly established a perimeter. Adama was later seen climbing out of a side window, draped in a blanket. SWAT officers issued multiple commands for Adama to raise his hands, drop the blanket, and comply. Several warnings about the use of force were also given. However, Adama refused to comply. Instead, he raised his right arm, revealing a large knife, and charged toward the officers. His second sudden attack forced police to open fire. Adama was shot, fell to the ground, and dropped the knife. The Los Angeles Fire Department's Emergency Medical Support Unit immediately assessed Adama's condition and determined he had died at the scene, that no officers or civilians were injured in the incident. Many online viewers expressed confusion in the video's comments, questioning why the suspect chose to confront armed officers rather than surrender. He seemed to have sealed his own fate by believing he could take on 7 armed police officers with just a knife. A shocking moment was captured on Bodycam as a knife-wielding woman was fatally shot by police in Jacksonville, Florida. Leah Baker, 29, a young mother with mental health issues, called the police to her home at around 5 p.m. on April 11, 2020, following an argument with her roommate over medication. Police footage of the incident shows how quickly the situation escalated, with the woman's aggressive attack leading to the deadly shooting. Bodycam video shows Officer Elizabeth Meckling arriving at Baker's home on Gulfair Boulevard, knocking on the door and stepping back. Within seconds, a woman in a yellow shirt suddenly burst through the doorway, wildly swinging a knife at the female officer, who instinctively raised her arms to defend herself. The officer shouted and drew her gun, ordering Baker to stop. The woman immediately dropped the knife, but instead of surrendering, picked it up again and attempted to attack the responding officers. Gunshots rang out. The woman appeared almost zombie-like. Despite being shot multiple times, she remained standing. More officers arrived at the scene, and the wounded officer was quickly treated for her injuries. Baker collapsed but still clutched the knife and began attacking a police K-9. Officers swiftly moved in to restrain and subdue the woman. Paramedics arrived and attempted to provide medical aid, but Baker was later pronounced dead at the hospital. In August 1817, the state attorney's office ruled that the officer's use of deadly force was justified. This was one of 14 officer-involved shootings involving the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office since November 2018 that had been cleared. A mentally ill person can be just as dangerous as anyone else and can kill you. You have to protect yourself and others. The officers were right to use deadly force. One officer commented on Baker's death. As seen in the video, when police knocked on the door, the woman in yellow lunged at the officer in an instant. Had the officer not stepped back, she could have been stabbed in the torso, face. Baker's family later held a memorial rally on July 19th to remember her. These videos highlight that resisting law enforcement never leads to a good outcome.